Welcome to Sunday Morning Ramblings. How are you? How are you doing, Lewis?
Yeah,
Yeah, just yeah, because you're tired.
I ain't got no comment. Um, that's going to be the general theme of this morning's show. I ain't got no comment.
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe it means we'll actually do this in a decent amount of time for once.
That's that's the curse. That's the jinx. That's the classic jinx which we've fallen into right off the bat.
We say it'll finally be a decent amount of time, and then it never is.
Yeah, yeah. If we don't say it, that's when it happens.
I mean, we'll see what happens, but I guess we should just get right into stuff. So
Cool.
It's not like there's anything else to talk about. So first show up is ReZero, as per usual. It's nice that we're only talking about one episode this week again after last week's mayhem. So
God, yeah.
what did you think of the most recent episode of ReZero, Lewis?
God, you're asking for my opinion. Shit.
Dude, what the fuck did you expect when we started recording?
I don't know, man. Maybe you could have talked and I could have just done like some reactionary shit. Now I have to think.
We'll just cover what you can, and I'll pick up the slack.
Okay. Shit, what happened?
You don't even remember what happened.
I watched it today as well, which is what's extra bad about this.
Wow.
So the main thing that happened is Subaru got turned corrupted into Betel Goose, and then thing voiced by Yukishi Takia.
This is an
him.
awful start to this recording.
Hey man, I've had a long day. I just want to give some context for the kids. I just moved into my new place and that's tired me out. It's 11:30 here, which is not exactly my bedtime, but you know, it's a time which I'm not supposed to be apically awake.
It's just funny because like we've done this when you've been tired before and you were so largely okay, you just didn't have as many thoughts. And this, your brain is just completely scrambled. Like you can't even remember what you watched. You're just like trying to think it up on the fly.
Yeah, like I don't know. Since like that was just like I was just tired from doing nothing all day. I've done a lot today, so like I'm extra there, you know. Physically tired as well as mentally.
Maybe I should just give my thoughts first, and then you can just add on because it'll help you remember.
Sure. Yeah, that's actually a brilliant idea. Good for it. Go for it.
All right. So the most recent episode of ReZero, it's funny that last week we talked about, or maybe I just talked about, and then we just kind of added on to it, how the show has had an issue of not focusing on Amelia because of Rem being around. And this episode confirmed that, everyone's going to hate me for saying this, getting rid of Rem was the best thing the show could do at this point. Because now the focus is back on Amelia, and we get to see a bit more of her. Which, to be fair, isn't entirely just a Rem thing. It's just kind of like a show thing. Like, it can't seem to focus on having two girls be the focus at once for some reason. So now that Rem's out of the picture, like, we're back on to, like, focusing with Amelia. We kind of got that last week, but it was just one little scene of Amelia, you know, kind of moping around a bit in the room, which we got context for in this episode. It's because she went to the village and tried to warn everyone, and no one gave a shit, and she repaired the barrier and stuff like that. So further continuing ReZero's trend of not really having any pointless scenes at all, which is a really nice touch. Well, it's not really a nice touch so much as it is just a writing thing. Like, every scene has a purpose. It's not just there for fluff. But yeah, the most recent episode was nice to see Amelia back in action again. What else was there? Obviously, the big thing was the whole thing with Betelgeuse at the end, which was nice little twist. Like I mentioned last time, I was trying to figure out how the whole thing with the fingers worked, and now we got confirmation that it was Betelgeuse all along in all of the fingers. It's just that he never said it was him. He just said he was one of the fingers because in reality he was, because he had taken over their body. So he wasn't really himself. He was one of the fingers. So he just never said, yo, I'm Betelgeuse in another body. It was just like, oh, I'm one of Betelgeuse's fingers. And it kind of works because they've already set him up to be fucking insane. So it's not like he's going to clarify that kind of shit to people. He's just going to be like, yeah, I'm a finger now. So It worked. At least, and we got context. I mean, it makes sense because now he's just like, "Where's my?" I guess we don't entirely have context for him wondering where his book is. Maybe the book transfers with him or something. Like it's this magical book thing that just kind of goes where he goes. And it didn't because Subaru had it, and because he has the whole connection to the witch, like it's kind of like a barrier that stopped it from moving. I mentioned something in that similar vein last week, but I figured it was a different context with the fingers rather than Betelgeuse being in them. Again, now that we saw this ending stuff, the question is whether where the checkpoint will be, which I assume it won't have changed, but this is all assuming Subaru is actually dead. Like the show did cut away on the downward slice. It's possible, as unlikely as it is because it's a sword being swung down, that he actually wasn't killed. Maybe they did something which would get Betelgeuse out of the body. I mean, Julius is a spirit arts knight, and it seems like Betelgeuse is almost like a spirit of his own, how he can like inhabit people's bodies. So, which also adds in context for the whole thing of Julius's comment about being what did he say it was? It was he had a good affinity or something with spirits, which could be foreshadowing for the whole thing about Betelgeuse being able to possess him. Although I figured that wasn't really necessary so much as him just having a connection to the witch and being dark magic as fuck. So I figured that something like that would be enough. Or maybe him holding the book and having looked at it. Who knows? What else was there? There was I think that's all off the top of my head. If you want to go from that point, Lewis, and then I can think of anything if I forgot.
What was I going to say about the thing? I feel like they might be starting a new. If they start a new loop from here, it'll be, I guess, kind of redundant at this point because, see, all the previous loops with back ways in the show with Subaru going back to to do those sort of futile attempts over and over again without any like progress when he was like punished Subaru. That was just to show him have that sort of dark spiral of darkness that he was going into. So having him sort of get killed off now while he's trying to make so much progress, it would be kind of redundant. I feel like that would be the point that that they might be going for here, but we're not going to see the white whale again anytime soon. If we did that again, that'd be in the space that we have now as well. What, like 2 episodes left? Nah. So there probably was some sort of like mini exorcism going on there. So I have no words to add.
That's fine. Yeah. I can add on already anyways. The whole reset thing is like, that's kind of the thing. Like because of how this episode ended, I did something I rarely ever do, which is I went out and looked for reactions to the episode. And something I noticed that was common, not everyone, but something that was common was when Subaru was like fighting over for control of his body and he got to the point where he told Julius to kill him. A lot of people said, yes, kill him. Like, they, do it, get the reset going. Which was really surprising to me, because the entire point of this was how he'd done so much this arc, and having to reset and do it all over again is such a huge blow. Like, it's not like Subaru managed to get through all this stuff just because of raw skill and knowledge. Like, a lot of it is luck, like, just enemies doing the things that they did. Like, there's a good chance the next time, if he had to fight the white whale again, that more people could die. Maybe someone more important would end up permanently dead on the second fight just because the whale does something a bit different. Like, a lot of it is just up to chance on these resets. So it was really weird to see these people, just kind of be like, oh yeah, go for the reset. But I guess the idea is that he was going to lose the battle with his body. Because there's an interpretation where, like, maybe if Subaru lost the battle with his body and Betelgeuse was, like, the main host or something, his return by death power wouldn't work anymore if he was killed. So I guess there's that sort of interpretation into it in that regard. But even then, people didn't seem very reluctant about him resetting, which was odd. But again, that wasn't everyone. There were some people that realized how awful it would be for him to reset everything. Yeah. So it was just interesting to see that, because it kind of ties into the people that don't like the show complaining that there's no weight to anything because he can reset. And yet there are people here who like the show that are like, yeah, reset, it's no problem. It's like kind of weird. And then there was something else I was going to add on, but I can't remember it because I was talking about that. I think it was something else related to the reset, and I can't remember what it was. Shit. Damn. I guess I just have to drop it unless I can remember it. Was there anything else you wanted to say?
Nah.
Fuck. That means I don't have time to remember it if that was the case. Because I know there was something, I just can't remember what it was.
Oh, well.
And I know it was related to the ending episode stuff, so it was definitely in that part.
Well, I'll tell you something.
Sure.
Tell you something real quick here. In regards to the old dude. Wilhelm, yeah. I wonder if he's gonna die.
Yeah, it's he was injured, but he's definitely not dead. But
that's all the time you got, man. That's all I could come up with.
It's something to talk about. I mean, we were mentioning last week how we expect someone to die permanently, which is still a very real possibility. I mean, it may end up being Subaru, but although that wouldn't be permanent. But we were saying how someone important could end up dying in this because it's been set up pretty much. But that's still very much a possibility that could happen. I mean, we've still got like 2 episodes to go, so
probably end on it.
Who really knows? I guess I should also mention just something I remembered off the top of my head that we never really talked about it, but I really like that the show has its title cards at the end of the episode, because a lot of shows just do it at the beginning, and it kind of works in a like setup for what you're gonna see sort of way, where it's just
right, gotcha, yeah.
Where it's just like, okay, here's the title of the episode, and you're just like, oh, okay, I have a general idea of what's probably gonna happen this episode. But with ReZero, it's a bit smarter with how it does it at the end of the episode, because, like, you get through all the stuff that's happened, and then you get the title that summarizes, like, the main idea of the episode, which either you've already gotten, so it hits you hard, or you don't really get, and so then it just, like, puts everything into clarification. Like, obviously, this episode had it end, and the title was Nefarious Sloth, which, pretty good summary, because you're like, fucking Battleuse motherfucker, and shit like that. Fucking phone. I don't know if that got picked up on the recording, but that was annoying.
Nah.
We got Nefarious Sloth. If we saw that at the beginning of the episode, like, people could have theorized that Betelgeuse was coming back. It could have been anything else, but it's definitely something people could have thought about, and it was just more powerful at the end of the episode after all the shit that he caused to put Nefarious Sloth on the thing, and you're just like, yeah, fuck that guy. Or, probably the best one they ever did was the 13 one, with the fight that, verbal fight, that Amelia and Subaru had, and then after she leaves and Subaru's left alone, and he has, her jacket or something, and he's, like, crying into it, the title ends with Self-Proclaimed Knight, Natsuki Subaru, which was, like, the perfect summary of the episode. Like, he went out of his way, you know, he was the one calling himself a knight, no one else was doing it. Like, it perfectly encapsulated the selfishness he was showing that episode, and how he's passing it off as, like, a good thing. Self-proclaimed knight. I mean, even though that is literally what he did, it also summarizes pretty beautifully what that episode was about as far as Subaru goes. Like, so I really appreciate the end title cards. They work a lot. There are others that just are like, whatever. They're just kind of nice. They don't hit that hard, but the ones that do hit, so good. It's just the right touch.
But just when nah, I'm not even gonna bother. I'm gonna mess it up.
I was curious what you had to say, and then you just fucking dropped it.
I was just gonna add to that meme. Really, it's just none.
There was also, I guess, something else to mention on the end of the episode: the fact that literally it would have been nicer if it started up right after Subaru asked Julius to kill him instead of a little bit earlier. But the fact that the song literally titled Stay Alive is being played while the guy's asking people to kill him is kind of ingenious. So that was like, if you've ever wondered what perfection looks like, there you go. So that was also great. Like, stay alive just works as an ED in general because of everything that happens in the show. Stay alive. Do what you can, do the right stuff. Try and not die. But then this episode especially, it takes on a very more specific aspect as far as what's going on with with the whole song called "Stay Alive" playing over everything that's happening. So that was also really nice. And I think that's about it for everything I could probably pull out of my head for this episode. was that I already asked, but was that all you have to say about the episode, Lewis?
Yeah.
All right. We should move on to the next show then, which I believe we cover Orange next. So, this episode of Orange, it's weird for me to go first, but here I go. So this episode of Orange was both weird but also good, because we mentioned last time that Orange tends to be at its best when it's focusing on the issues with Kakeru and when that gets brought to a head, which kind of it did this time. Not as much as an emotional impact as the last time when Sua confronted him with Naho, but that's fine. If it tried to ride that emotional peak constantly, it would just get irritating, like Planad. So the fact that it was more low-key about it this time, but still, kind of touching, and like him coming forward with the fact that he never told them that his mother was dead, except I think he told Naho at one point, but it was for everyone else. So it was nice that we got the little touch. He seems to be getting a little more forward, like they seem to actually be getting to him, because now he's actually kind of like making a few moves on Naho. So that's an interesting touch. I'm still interested to see where it goes as far as Sua, because he definitely has feelings for Naho, but at the same time, he doesn't want Kakeru to die. And it's kind of interesting where they could possibly go with that angle. So I'm very curious in that regard. The art was better this episode, but there were still a couple off-model shots that were kind of weird. Some of them were just a given because they were kind of far away shots, and like whenever there's far away shots of characters, the detail's always wonky. It just kind of happens. But the close-up shots were a lot better. Like, there were close-up shots last episode that were really, really bad. Like, characters' eyes were not aligned properly. Their mouths were just, like, hanging open. Like, it was really bad. So it was better this episode, but there were still a few hitches here and there, which means that they're maybe building up for some stuff in the last few episodes. The focus is going on those or something. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Otherwise, it was just the end of the sports festival stuff. It was largely just a build up for the Kakeru admitting, what's going on with him and stuff like that, and them going with it. Although it was really weird for it to end with Naho being like, so, I've learned not to rely on the letter, and then like literally next time it's like, but the letter's not always wrong, and it's just like, wait, I thought they were trying to make a point about how they should just go with what feels right, because just following, like, an angle the show could go for is following the letter literally works at first, but after a certain point, Jesus Christ, people are texting the shit out of me.
Wow.
Why am I popular today? So,
You're not.
Wow. So, an angle that works is, the fact that maybe the letter works for it first, but not always. But after a point, the letter doesn't really work anymore. They have to, like, it's like, why isn't the letter working? I'm doing its instructions, but it doesn't work because of the changes. So the idea is that it needs, what's it called? They have to just rely on their own feelings about what's going on. They have to kind of feel it out. They have to learn how to work with it. Like, the letter's almost like not a tutorial, but like a guide to help them get started as far as like what to do. And then when things start to change, they need to learn how to like deal with, helping their friend on their own and stuff like that. So that's an angle they could go for, but they're never really going for it. They're like off and on about whether they should rely on the letter or not, which is weird. I don't know. It just seems like they should take more of a stance, which maybe they will in the last couple episodes. But yeah, that was that episode. What do you think, Lewis?
Well, the first thing that actually came to mind was like during the relay when they did that sort of like, relay of messages to Kakeru. I thought it was endearing, but it was also kind of ridiculous at the same time, Like, this is just a minor criticism at best, a pet peeve almost, but like, it was sweet, but it was just like, you're practically giving him an essay of a like message at the end of it all. But anyways, what else was there? and then this kind of like almost kind of funny production issues that was going along with Orange. I didn't really have that sort of like uh not much like I guess negativity that came out of it. You know, it was an alright. It was a good episode of anime. Um,
Most general statement ever. Good episode of good anime.
yeah. You know, it's nice to see that like I guess the character Gawker's actual happiness and morale is like increasing as far as the show goes on, and like they're not like, well, I suppose they are kind of shoving it in your face, but like,
I mean, it is the main point of the show, man.
yeah, but like they're kind of doing it and not sort of like, I guess, well, they are kind of doing it in a cheap way in fairness, but like, I don't know, like they do things, the sort of relationship building between Naho and Gawker was nice. If I was writing the show, I would not make Naho as innocent as she is, because it's kind of getting sort of beyond stupid at this point. Like, yeah, like even things happening in the last episode kind of branching out into this one, like it seemed to me that like applying a plaster to his like upper bicep was like a big deal apparently. But hey, this is anime. They have to be pure. Otherwise, they're no good.
Well, I don't mind the more like innocent angle of her being like, "Oh my god, it's this guy I like, and I'm gonna like touch his muscles." Like I don't mind that angle. It's just when she's being fucking retarded that I don't like. Like when she's just like I mentioned last time, where she, you know, he's like wants to hold hands with her and walk home, and she's just like, I don't get it. Does he like me? Like that's the kind of stupid I can't stand. But this was fine. This episode was not a big deal. Like I don't mind the more innocent angle. I wish, I wish it would kind of move on from this point after this, you know, many episodes, but in comparison to what we had last time, Jesus Christ, this was like fucking miraculous change.
Oof. If you're expecting me to say something here, I'm not going to.
Well, I figured you'd add on, but I guess you're done talking about Orange then.
Yeah, no, I mustered everything I could say about Orange, so.
Yeah, and I didn't really have anything to add on to what you were going to say.
Cool.
You know, we joked about it before we started, but it looks like we probably actually will end shorter than ever, which actually may be a good thing for once, after all the really long recordings.
It's amazing. It's miraculous.
It's miraculous. It's amazing what happens when you don't have anything to say.
I should do this more often.
We should do this more often. There was an episode that aired. I don't really have anything to say. What about you, Lewis? No, I don't have anything to say. All right, cool. Next show. Just wonderful. Wonderful content.
Eat that shit up.
Anyways, we should move on to the next show, which is 91 Days. So, going first again. It's so weird to go first. I'm used to like listening to you say things and then I think about the episode while you're talking about it. But having to go first is just like, oh right, what happened in this episode?
See, now you know the struggles that I have.
Well, you seem to do fine all the time when I ask you what you want to do in the episode. You just kind of have a slow start where you remember what happened in the episode, but then after, you know, the first couple of comments, you're like into it and you know what you're gonna say and you keep adding on and stuff. Whereas I'm sitting here and I'm just like, oh fuck, what do I say first? I don't even know.
I'm a miraculous, charismatic son of a bitch is basically what you're trying to get out of here.
Sure, if you want to interpret it that way.
Yeah.
Anyways, this episode of 91 Days. You know, when we were covering Cabaneri, I made a comment after episode like 8 or 9 or something around that area, where I mentioned how I was like checked out of the show. Like at that point, like, you know, the show could turn amazing and maybe it would pull me back in, but for the most part, I just didn't care anymore about what was going on. It was too late. I'm kind of at that point with 91 Days now. Like, not to as much of a degree as Cabaneri was, because Cabaneri was just, like, irritating as fuck. But I just don't, like, I've realized it's, like, 9 episodes into 91 Days, and I just don't really give a shit about anyone. Like, obviously there's Angelo, which is the setup for the entire show to begin with, which, I mean, I guess I sort of care about. But the completely lackadaisical focus on it is just irritating me. Like, I get that he needs to find out who the fourth person was, which I guess we found out this week. But like everything that's happened just feels like fluff. It feels like it's just wasting runtime at this point, just to like extend itself. It's just so, I don't want to say boring, but it's just like irritating after a point. It doesn't feel like it's getting to the point. So, or I guess a show doesn't have to get to the point right away, but it needs to do something to add to its point or set up for it or do things like that. And a lot of 91 Days has just been nothing. Like, they've just been doing nothing. I know I just said that twice, but it was for emphasis. I mean, there's a potential for it to turn around, which is why I say it's not to the degree of Cabaneri. Like, finally things could go in the direction now that we've supposedly found out who the fourth person is, who we've known for like 5 lines of dialogue, so it was very impactful.
Yeah.
That was sarcasm. But there's a potential to see where this goes. Like, there's the only way the show could turn. Let me put it this way: the only way the show could end, and I could consider it a good show at this point, is if it ends in a way that makes you rethink the previous events that happened. Because that's the only way it's gonna work. Reframing the previous events is like the only way to salvage the show at this point, which is maybe his little brother still being alive. Like, we gotta mention this episode that Nero didn't actually shoot anybody. He made a comment about how he couldn't shoot anybody, which means that he didn't, like, apparently he shot more than just at Angela. We don't really know who was who because they were masked, but supposedly Nero didn't shoot anyone. Like, he wasn't able to pull himself to do it. And he, because of the comment of not just the kid that ran away, means there was probably someone else he was supposed to shoot but didn't. So there's a very real possibility someone in that family was still alive. So that could end up being a thing later on, which could end up salvaging the show. But who really knows what else is going on? Like, what's this random jackass's plan? Like, it's like, I guess he wants to take the family from Nero or something. He's just pretending to be the most loyal. Like, it's just a facade. I don't know.
I don't know.
I kind of knew it was him though right from the beginning because, Cordia was tied up and shit, and he supposedly had a gun and shot the crap out of this one dude and then got out the window. And it was like, yeah, after he was beat up, I don't see him doing this kind of athleticism. So I knew it was staged in some way. And the only initial way that I could process that it would work is if the guy that was shot in the arm, which very convenient graze wound, had been in on it in some way. So I didn't know which degree he was involved, but I had a very good, inclination, I guess, that he had something to do with the escape in some manner or form. So didn't completely predict the ending bit, but I knew he was up to something. But even then, it's like we've still known the guy for like 5 lines of dialogue, and it's like, who cares? Like, it'd be more surprising if the advisor to Nero was the one who actually was like in on the betrayal or something. And maybe he is. Maybe there's this huge fucking scheme going on. Who knows? But yeah, that was the last episode of 91 Days. What would you think?
Sorry, I was yawn. Yeah, like, they are definitely elongating things through ways that they really shouldn't be. Like, I feel like that they wanted to make the kind of like the fourth person to be a surprise for the audience, so they kind of like didn't want to put too much of a focus on one single person. So we kind of like automatically guess, you know, like the dude voiced by Ano Daisuke, that was like, yeah, he's one of them, since they were putting a lot of focus on him. I guess they did the opposite of this and just kind of had like that sort of like conveniences within the Cortio's getaway that kind of like pointed towards. That's the only thing we had to pick up on. The problem with that is that, which is a problem with, is pretty consistent with 91 Days, is that we just don't know who the hell everyone is. Like,
yeah,
that guy was like a guy that works for Nero, but I only really remember him showing up in like the last episode, you know? I don't really remember him having any purpose in anything in the show, so it's hard to keep track. Well, it's not hard to keep track, it's hard to define importance within the characters.
It's like they're riding the coattails of Durarara after doing it, without realizing that the way you could keep track of all the wacky characters in Durarara is because they're all wacky in their own unique ways. Like, they have unique aspects to their personality that make them easily rememberable. Not, like, even if you can't memorize all their names, which I certainly can't, I can memorize what their character personalities are just by seeing them at a glance. I know who they are, you know? Whereas in 91 Days, it's almost like they're trying to do something similar with the huge cast of characters, but not anywhere near enough of them are interesting enough to remember.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, it's... They all just kind of, like, fade into the sort of same gray area of just...
Gangster.
Angsty mobster. Yeah. So, it's hard to really tell them apart other than Fango, who was really out there. Like, but... That's just because they just seem to have a little boner for him. But, yeah, like, the show definitely has some sort of misdirections, which have definitely been a big bad point of it. Like, first off, not concentrating on Angelo was the major thing that's been fucking up. Now they're kind of, like, going back towards that, obviously, with the last few episodes, so... I guess these few episodes will be the saving grace of it. But the midpoint of the show was definitely a sort of fluff. Like, just like that one episode where it was just like Angelo and Nero just fucking about. Like,
and the one fucking like Looney Tunes villain is chasing them around.
And like, it's funny, they even like referenced that, like, when they were like at the campfire or whatever. They referenced that scene like later on. So obviously... Yeah, but it's just so strange how like they've gone through all these lengthy measures to fluff things out when they had like this gold mine of a character right in front of them that they could just like exploit so much to just make it all worthwhile, rather than just throwing in all these mobsters that whose levels of importance or to the story is just completely unclear. So yeah, that's 91 Days for me.
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. I can't really add on to that.
Yeah,
it's just basically I kind of mentioned it as we were going over it, the fact that it's kind of like Durarara, and they're trying to copy it in that aspect without realizing why you were able to memorize all those characters. So it's kind of in that regard. It's almost like they thought they would just be more memorable because the Riyogaa characters are decently disconnected. They just happen to cross paths. Whereas in 91 Days, they're all in like, these specific gangster families. So they're like closer. So they're like, oh, you'll be easier able to remember them because they're all closer already. But no, you don't
no.
Because they're just whoever, like, who gives a shit? Like, there's that one dude who literally like keeps taking bullets for Nero, whose like nose was broken this episode or something. He goes getting drunk, I believe, along with Nero and Angelo. Like, what the fuck is that guy's name? Like, what does he do again? Like, other than take bullets for Nero? Like, that's all he's done in the show. It feels like he should be more memorable, but he isn't. Like, there was even the whole plot where they had to like make friends with Fango to get him healed up, so he wouldn't die, and like you still don't know or give a shit about who he is. It's just like so unbalanced as far as the characters go, as far as making you care about them, which is a big problem. Which, as we've both said, like the last few episodes we're gonna have to see how those play out to see if it manages to change things around. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it'll have to put a new perspective on the previous episodes that happened to really get anywhere. But who really knows? Maybe some crazy shit will happen and we won't see coming, and it'll just be like incredible. Who really knows?
Who knows?
Yeah. So was that it for 91 Days? Yeah, we're already on our last show. So our last show, which we switched to last week, was Alderamin in the Sky. But before that, I'll do what I did last time. Extremely brief thoughts on Thunderbolt Fantasy for those who picked it up because we were covering it. This episode, the final plan is being put into place to get the sword and the handle back, and shit's probably gonna go wrong because now that our spear dude has decided he's going to be a good guy. Well, I mean, he was always a good guy, but he didn't realize the company he was with. He's now deciding to help out the chick. So that's probably gonna cause problems with the big plan that's going on, and there's gonna be a lot of conflict in that regard. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But for Alderamin in the Sky, oh shit, I also have to cover that first. 2 shows at once, covering first. God damn it. So this episode of Alderamin in the Sky was another episode of Alderamin in the Sky. That's a pretty accurate summary of it. How do I put this? I almost don't want to cover the opening bits because I don't want to deal with any potential drama, but at the same time, like, I feel like there's stuff I want to say. How do I word this without pissing people off? I think that's impossible.
No.
This was a scene of the sexual kind that I'm okay with because of how it played out. Like, for one, it didn't actually end up happening, which tends to be a big problem with those shows, is like, it's like, oh, this is the thing that happens, and then it happens, and the only reason it happens is to be, like, edgy, because, like, they actually got through with it, which is like, fuck you, Whereas with a show like Alderamin, which is very much focused on, like, the dark side of war and, like, the kinds of jackassery people can display because of war, it's almost like they kind of needed to cover this, and they did it in the best way they could, which was Ikeda, like, knowing, like, he knew when that village was on fire that people were going to be doing some bad shit, and he immediately wanted to get in there and stop, any potential awfulness from happening, which he did. And he had the whole comment about, which he referenced the last speech from the previous, well, it wasn't really a speech, the talk from the last episode about, the whole hero and warrior thing. But was just like, this is, I don't remember the exact line, but he was just basically along the lines of, like, I don't mind that, but this is like, fuck you, you're not doing that, I don't remember. I wish I remembered the exact line, but I watched it, like, yesterday. But I have a lot of things on my mind, okay? I'm doing a lot of work. So, that was probably the best way they could have handled that, because they kind of needed to cover it. Like I said, usually the edgy aspect and the awful aspect of doing something like that is it actually happening. There are exceptions. You can have it happen and still not be, like, completely, I mean, it'll still be off-putting, but generally the idea is to be off-putting for some reason. Like, it's a lot more careful if it actually happens, but when it doesn't, usually that's how you do it, because the point is, like, you can argue about why it happened in any, in-lore context, but the fact that it actually carried out was the author's decision to be like, yes, this needs to happen. And it's just like, that's when it gets iffy. So the fact that the author, like, brought it up, but then was like, of course I'm not going to actually let it happen, is, the good thing. It's better to not just completely ignore this kind of stuff, especially because, like I said, Alderamin's kind of been about, awful shit that happens in war. So it kind of was fitting to cover something like that. But anyways, I should move on to something else. The rest of the episode, weirdly, we're finally getting introduced to a rival tactician, which was both inevitable, but weirdly took a very long time to get to. I mean, he kind of dealt with, I don't know if it was the same guy, but he kind of dealt with one, with the Synac and all the strategies they were using before, but it was never really a constant threat. It was just kind of like, oh, they have someone smart helping them and stuff. And they did lose a couple people, but it wasn't like this huge deal. I guess what was more interesting is the fact that Ikeda chopped off his fucking finger, which is permanent damage on him, because this world, you can't grow that shit back, So, I mean, the only reason I say that is because, maybe the spirits, that can do healing stuff, like Haru's spirit, was able to, like, reverse that kind of damage, but they can't. That pinky's gone. And the fact that you, like, would damage your character like that permanently, I mean, it's a pinky. It's not the biggest deal in the universe, but the fact that you would actually take the lengths to damage your main character like that is interesting. You don't often see that in shows and writing and such. Like, people, like, want their main character to be untouchable, I mean, they're the main point of the story. In a way, they kind of have to be, but at the same time, like, the fact that you're willing to, like, have them go through some shit is interesting. Like, he just went through some mental issues. Well, not mental issues, but mental struggles with the fact that he wasn't able to save Kana. I believe that was her name. And now he's dealing with physical issues with not having a pinky. So it's interesting the kind of stuff that the show is willing to put him through. It's very interesting, which is a shame because we'll probably never get a season 2 after this one because it's Madhouse. What else? I think that was it, actually. There wasn't much else. This was largely a setup episode of, like, preparing you to, like, reveal the rival tactician, and now they're going to duke it out in the next episodes and stuff like that.
Oh.
What did you think, Lewis?
Yawn again. Yeah, like, my brief comments on the thing that, yeah, I feel like fiction simply can't ignore aspects of real life, you know, like it'll be living in blissful ignorance only gets you so far. So it was, yeah, same thing that you said. Like it's a matter of like this shit happens, you gotta have it. But yeah, it was a good thing that like they didn't follow up with it, because generally when that sort of thing happens, I don't really and it's kind of portrayed on screen as well, not many positives come out of it. Like using it as a storytelling device, I'm really tiptoeing around my words here, is fine to an extent, but it's just a matter of portraying it that's very, very dodgy. And they did really the perfect job of doing it. Like they didn't ignore the reality of it while still keeping the integrity of the show up, I guess is the best way of putting it. So yeah, that was good. Moving on. Yeah, like whenever Ikta, I feel, gets like when he's ever gets a chance to show not just his like superiority and strength commanding an army, but rather his strength in character, I think that's when the show is at its peak, when it's not dealing with like battles and whatnot. So that sort of like meeting with Nana in the tent or whatever, when he like was cutting off his finger, not just in one go, in chunks, like bit by bit, like that was very, very powerful. Like it really kind of drove the nail home that like Ikta is a very what's the word, resolved human being, like very strong, mentally strong as well, which is very admirable for him. And it was cool. But yeah, other than that, there wasn't really any developments. You know, we just saw the camaraderie with Ikta and the fat dude.
The fat dude.
And yeah, like it was fine. It was a good episode. I'm interested to see how the new commander comes into play, because like I think they're kind of like labeling him as like the one who doesn't sleep or whatever, on sleepless. So I guess like they're kind of because like the title of the next episode is called the Lazy versus Unsleep or something like that. I don't know. So I guess we're gonna have like some sort of two commanders using unique battle tactics to kind of like counteract each other. So we're gonna have like a proper battle of wits next episode, or whenever they come to fight, rather than just Ikta being like, haha, I outsmarted you fuckers, and just completely wipe them out. So that'd be cool to see. But yeah, other than that, like it was a solid episode of Alderamin, so good.
Yep, that's yeah.
Yeah.
That's really all there is to say. Like, I mean, we mentioned before, it was largely set up. Like, a good chunk of the episode was just like, oh god, this army from this country or whatever is coming. What are we gonna do? And it's like, okay, get us these units, and then we'll do this plan, and we'll start burning stuff. And then the episode ended. It was like a lot of it was set up was doing setup for the confrontation to come. So it's not like there was all that much to talk about other than obviously the opening stuff. And yeah, I mean, the thing with the opening stuff, I guess, to add on to that is like a large part of what makes it like an issue in certain stuff is like one of the important aspects of it is the condemnation of it. Like, you can't just have it in there and then have it portrayed like positively at all, because that's fucked up. So it's important to have the negative aspect of it, and usually it's better just to like not have it happen and have the negative aspect, because then it's like, there you go. So yeah, I don't know what else I was gonna add on other than the intent of the portrayal is what's important, which is really the case for almost anything. So it's like, wow, big shock there. But yeah, I is that all you wanted to say about Alderamin?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, really quick Saturday morning ramblings this week. It was not much to say. I mean, we covered, ReZero after, a good chunk of time, like around usual, but that was largely because we couldn't remember what we wanted to say. And then the other shows, I guess there were also parts that we didn't remember what we wanted to say, but we got through them pretty quickly. But yeah, I feel like part of it's just because it's also like wind down. I mean, obviously shit happened in like ReZero, for example, but a lot of it is like preparation or wind down for like a lot of shows only have like 2 or 3 episodes left. So we're at the point where the shows are just kind of like the calm before the storm, really. Yeah. So it's kind of like that. Also, you were tired, so you didn't have much to say. So there was also that. Before I ask for closing comments, I should mention that I don't know what's going on next week, because we may not. I'm going to be working on something. Hint, hint, wink, wink. And I don't know if there will be time to record something like this and edit it and get it out. So we may not have a Saturday, or I guess I should say at this fucking point, Sunday morning ramblings next week. So that's just something to keep in mind. It may happen. It'll depend on how progress goes. But just to put that out there before, because usually I have to leave a comment if it doesn't end up happening, because usually the reason we don't record this is because we end up being busy. One of us or both of us are busy on Friday and then also Saturday. So that's usually when it happens. So I don't know until like Saturday that we're not doing it. So usually I just have to leave a comment where I'm like, we didn't do it this week because of reasons. So just saying it now in this recording that we may not have one next week, depending on how stuff goes. Yeah. Closing comments, Lewis?
Yawn.
Yawn. That's your closing comment? Just yawn?
Hang on a second now.
Okay.
I'm trying to think here. Like, do my best here, but I just... Yeah, nah.
You never really have closing comments anyways. You're gonna have something super insightful this time?
I feel like, it's kind of redundant at this point to tell them all to follow me on my Twitter or whatever, so that's kind of thrown out the window. And let's be truly honest here, no one really cares about my personal life, so that's also out the window as well. So all I can really say is some fucking dank ass shit, and that's the end of that. At least humanize myself through humor, so yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I guess that's it for this week, and we may or may not see you next week, and if we don't, we'll see you the week after, but that's it for this week, so bye-bye, I guess. Could you say anything without yawning first?
That's the thing, though. It's kind of funny. Like, everything before I say something, I yawn. Like, it's as soon as... Yeah, bye.
Bye. See, that's so hard?
No.
Exactly.